Welcome to Collegiate Conversations, a space for conversations of all shapes and sizes coming out of the Collegiate Church network. Today, we are having a conversation in our series of conversations on health, being healthy, and becoming healthier in all areas of life, our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and relational, you name it. We're talking about that. And today we get to talk with Anna Beck. We've brought her on to share a little bit of how she has pursued health in her time in ministry, but also Anna is in a bit of a co-vocational role as she works a significant amount of time as a barista. So you just take a minute and just kind of share a bit about yourself, maybe what co-vocational looks like. If you want to share too, just kind of what your journey of being a missionary in Collegiate has looked like too. I'll just kind of let you start and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Hi guys. Yeah, I'm Anna Beck. I work part-time here in Kalamazoo with the H2O Church on Western Michigan University's campus. And I also work part-time working in a coffee shop in downtown Kalamazoo, and I'm also taking seminary classes. So some would say that's 3 part-time jobs. But I went on staff in 2018 after graduating from University of Michigan with the Western Church plant, and I spent about a year in initial support raising before deciding that I felt like, at least for the time that God was calling me, that was part-time, both personally, but also in how initial support raising has been going. And I've been doing that for the last year and a half now, I guess.
Thanks, Anna. Could you share a little bit about that decision to move to more of a co-vocational? It sounds like maybe you're more of like a tri-vocational now. Maybe we'll get to that in a little bit, but just can you describe some of that situation? It sounds like a pretty hard thing, but it sounds like a formative part of your story and getting where you're at now.
Yeah, for sure. As I was going through initial support raising, it was very hard on me. Just personally, as I was like, what does it look like to be faithful in MTD when it was just really, really hard, and it felt like harder on me than I had seen it be for other people or how other people experience it. And so I was trusting the Lord, and I was wanting to be on campus, and so I continued to do the work, even though it wasn't really translating into a lot of support coming. And so I actually got permission to take some time off to do Adirondack LT before I had finished support raising. And kind of when I came back from doing LT, where I was also working for the Y and for the LT program, I just felt like the Lord was, just inviting me into going part-time. It's not something I really wanted to do. I wanted to be full-time. I still want to be full-time, but I felt like the Lord was telling me, like, there are like things that I want for you here. There are things that like I want you to know how to rest. I want you to like know what it looks like to trust me. And I never really gotten the sense of the Lord is going to raise my full support, or like even my like calling ministry was never like going to be in full time. It has always been like, I will provide for you what you need. And so kind of just like that reminder, like the Lord is going to provide what I need, led me to transition to part-time in the fall of 2019.
Thanks for sharing that. So part of it sounds like in learning the Lord's provision is maybe different than a lot of missionaries in Collegiate of, oh, okay, I need to have other work. Was that sort of how you received that as well? That's kind of how I'm hearing it, but did you kind of see, okay, look, this is how I participate with you, or was it out of necessity that you kind of stepped into it as well?
I think a little bit of both. I think now I can say like there's been a lot of value both from a financial side and from like a personal and ministry side to have worked two different jobs. But I think at the time it was very much it was like a decision that I didn't fully understand, but felt clear like the Lord was leading me to not even pursue like other work, because I didn't for a little bit, but to not push myself to do like go back into initial support racing just because I felt like that's what I should do. But more of like, could I trust him to not do that, even if I knew that one day, like that's where I wanted to be.
So a lot of people who probably watch this are familiar with the support raising process, familiar of some idea of what it looks like to be on staff. Could you share just some of what your other job looks like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I work at an independent coffee shop, so that it's very different an experience than if you had worked at like a Starbucks or a Big B. But oh my gosh, there are so many things I could say. But it's also in a part of town where a lot of, it's near a gospel mission. So there's a lot of homeless people that near there. So it's a very interesting environment because we have a lot of people who go to churches in the neighborhood come and drink, like frequent our regulars. And then we also have a lot of people where we have to like just be mindful of their presence and still like care for them, but also like how do you run a business and everything. And so for me, being a barista, it's it's a craft coffee shop, so it's a lot of like preparing the drinks, and I work in opening and closing shifts, so it's a lot of early mornings or a lot of like cleaning, especially in this season of COVID, like sanitizing everything and making sure that people are following protocols, and also adhering to our like coffee shops protocols of like, oh, customers have to buy something in order to be in there, or various different things. So it's a very like, it's the food service part, but it's also a lot of like people relating, because unfortunately you have to kind of police the place a little bit, which I do not enjoy policing at all. But I think one of the things I have learned the most, other than like refining my like latte art, is how to like be direct, because I kind of just have to like say what I mean, and especially in engaging with the variety of customers that we have. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of opportunities to learn clear and direct communication while also being kind.
Yes.
So we brought you in today. We're doing this series on talking about being healthy, pursuing health, maybe even areas we struggle to be healthy. It's a large topic, but how in a co-vocational world, it sounds like you're kind of balancing a lot of things. You mentioned you have seminary in there also. Could you start off by just sharing a bit of an overview of how do you think about your own health holistically, and how do you go about pursuing that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I have to be okay with what my definition of like, what does it look like for me to be healthy in this spot is. I feel like I often have conversations and people are like, you need this. And I'm like, I actually need to spread out my work over more days. So I have a lot of flexibility. And I think that I kind of have to spend more time figuring out what will be helpful for me. And then when like my managers make suggestions, be like, okay, how do I take what I know is healthy, such having a Sabbath day, adding that to, okay, I have to get this work done, and it's somewhat flexible or it's not flexible at all. I'm like combining those together. And yeah, I think that for me to pursue health has been like, okay, what does it look like to be faithful to my jobs or responsibilities? And also, like, how can I have margin in my life in case, like, I personally need space or time, and what can I like build into daily rhythms that allow for my weeks to flow well together. Yeah, I think it's a good start.
Yeah, could you share a couple examples of those rhythms or things you build in to allow you to not just be healthy at a moment, but pursue health over the course of a week or a month or a season?
Yeah, for sure. I, at the moment, currently only have one full day off, which is fine by me. I need to have margin in my Sunday through Friday life in case I'm having like a personally rough day, to be like, okay, I can move that work into tomorrow, so that I have more space for that. And that's something I had to learn, that like forcing myself to take 2 full days off meant that the rest of my days felt very rushed, and like I didn't have any space, and that did not serve me for my days off, because then I felt like I was just rushing through those. And so that's one example. I try to take slow mornings on the days that I can, just because I know that I naturally need slow mornings and I can do a lot more work in the afternoons. And so just capitalizing on that and making my afternoons more full has been helpful for me, because I don't really get a choice in having when my like civil house shifts are, even though they're fairly consistent. And so this knowing what kind of flow of my weeks are going to be. And then I try to have at least I try to go for an hour-long walk every other day, which has just been helpful in the COVID, like staying at home season, but it gives me an hour where I can turn off my phone and just be okay with that, and have like the only sensory information be like my music playing, and that carries over into my Saturdays or my Sabbath days, where as much as possible I try to have my phone be off, just because I need some solitude. And it can be hard when you're juggling multiple things, or when I'm juggling multiple things, to actually have time away from technology or from people, because there are so many different responsibilities and to do things on my head. So that's kind of what it looks like for me.
So I was just imagining, ministry there's some set points, but it's pretty fluid. Then you basically have shift work, which are set moments.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to kind of figure out the flow, the balance? What did that process look like?
Yeah, I would say I have been working at my coffee shop job since late January of this year. I would say it wasn't until August that I finally felt like I knew what I needed, how to balance the 2 and then 3 when you have seminary together. Part of that is with the lockdown and some of the restrictions, my hours at the coffee shop fluctuated a lot, and there were a few weeks where I was working 50 plus hours, which I do not recommend, but I knew that they were temporary. And I had consistency in my schedule, but it was very busy. And so it was in the summer months, I had to basically, I was working at the coffee shop every weekend, and I had to schedule my whole life around trying to have Tuesdays off, because it was a day I could have off, which didn't really always work. And that was very hard. And so once thankfully I have a manager at the coffee shop who really wanted to help me have a healthy work-life balance. And so once we set this new schedule of like me working a weekday and a Friday, it gave me a chance to have Saturdays off, which was just helpful to like be like, oh, that's a day that's normally off. I can actually do that.
So you've shared a lot of things that have been helpful, things you pursued. What are just maybe some mistakes you've made in trying to be healthy? What are things that have hindered you? I know you mentioned that it's helpful for you to set your phone down. Is that a space that could be distracting, or what are other things that maybe they're just pitfalls you come across?
Yeah, I know for certain that when I'm tired and I think I'm trying to rest, I watch too much TV. So that's certainly something that I do, of like, be like, oh, it's just, a food competition show, but it's actually not restful, because basically my eyes are still engaging and my brain is still engaging, but also it's just not actually restful. So I think not having outlets where I could that would be like engaging, but that wouldn't be that would actually be like beneficial to me, like not knowing what I could do with notes, especially like earlier this year, was really hard. I think that having a lot of mental tasks, I was like, oh yeah, I just need to not do anything, but I needed to engage like my body a little bit more. And then let's see, other things that have not been helpful. Definitely thinking I can do it all, which I can't, and I know that, but I have a very hard time knowing what I can ask for and then believing that I can ask for it. And so given the just complexities of working in a coffee shop during COVID, it was very hard to even ask for time off, especially because I knew that the one other person who was working at that time would, like, we would either have to shut down the coffee shop or she would have to work it all. And so it was just, I like to be responsible, especially in relationships, and can sometimes find it hard to know how to not take responsibility for a thing that's not ultimately mine, but I still feel responsible. So I think that there's like two parts to that, of like not knowing what to ask for, but then also being like, no, I can do this, and just, it will be fine and I'll be fine. And then like 3 weeks later be like, oh, that was the absolute worst thing I could have done, but paying for it now.
So it sounds like, I imagine you feel this more with a couple jobs simultaneously. There's a bit of, some of the health is just in relational boundaries. Would that feel accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a struggle for sure. And I definitely would not say that I do it well often, but it's been helpful to be like, okay, I'm feeling responsible for this. Am I actually responsible for this? Yes or no. Can I still choose to do this? Yes or no. And then that actually, especially in ministry, that frees me up a lot more to be like, okay, I can do this. I know it's like not my responsibility, but I can choose to serve in this way. So that has been freeing for me for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like moving from responsibility to the opportunity to maybe offer a gift or something like that could be that's kind of the language I'm hearing, that it's okay, I'm not responsible here, but I can actually choose to still offer here. That sounds pretty powerful. Moving on a little bit, what advice or what would you say to someone who's maybe in a similar spot in collegiate? Maybe someone, they're entering into co-vocation, maybe they're in it and balance is out of whack. Maybe they're in that initial support raising and they're realizing they might need to take on a job. There's a lot of avenues you could take here, but maybe is there something that like God's given you that, and it might just apply to anyone in full-time ministry still, but what do you, is there a piece of wisdom you feel like God's given you that you could just share to those listening?
Yeah, I feel like the most helpful thing for me in all of this from initial to now has been the question of like, what does it mean to be faithful to the Lord and to what he has given? And I think that the Lord has given me a lot of faith to trust that he will provide, even if it's unorthodox or not what I hope for. And I think it's been because I've engaged with like, what does it mean to be faithful to him? And what does it mean that he is faithful to me? And I think in that there's like space to trust that the Lord is inviting you to steward well. And I think I have grown in seeing that, but only because I have engaged in that question. And I think too, like the second thing that comes up for me a lot is like, don't be not being afraid that like what works for me is different than everyone else. And like, yeah, I have people who be like, oh no, definitely shoot for the 2 days off. I literally cannot manage it. I work on a Friday. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to have a Friday off. And so I capitalize on it and do more like ministry work on a Friday, but that gives me more evenings off and it gives me a chance to go at a slower pace if I need to. And so that's certainly something that I've had to grow in a lot of confidence in, to be like certainty and trusting the Lord of like, no, this is what's good for my life. And it's not a one size fits all, but it's the pushing back against something just because it's what's expected of you and finding out what does the Lord like truly asking of you or inviting you into. It's definitely like, I think one of the most important questions that you can engage with in all of this.
That's good. That's really good. That's good. You started our conversation and you just mentioned sort of learning about trusting that the Lord will provide for you. I know I've always been encouraged by stories of that. Do you have any stories where you've just seen God like come through with like, listen, this is my provision and my faithfulness. I got you.
Yeah. I feel like I have a lot of stories, but one that has felt, I'll share two. One, I definitely did not think I was going to get this job, this cop shop job, because I was asking for a week off to go on a family vacation. I was shortly thereafter, I was asking for a week off to do spring break. And then I was also asking for the summer off to do Adirondack LT. Now that last one did not happen, but this year anyways. But I think it was very clear to me that if I got this job, it would be because the Lord gave it to me. And I didn't even know if I wanted it per se, but I was like, I should probably apply. I do love the coffee shop. And when I got hired, it felt like oh yeah, this felt like the Lord just moving this, because I should not. I was asking for so much time off. It did not make any sense to hire me. And then I would say that as frustrating as it is, that as much as I want to be at more hours than 25 with Reliant, the Lord has been faithful in providing me 25 hours. And even as my support has like changed and that, like a lot, and like people dropping and people coming on, it has remained steady. And that feels just like a gift from the Lord. Like I just recently had like a $250 a month supporter come onto the team, and like the next week found out that the large annual donor who's usually given wasn't gonna come, but like my support is like unchanged. And so there's like, I had a 13-minute phone call with that guy, and I've never met him before, and it led to that. And so it was just like it was a cool moment of like, I did nothing to earn this, and you are faithful to provide, even if it confuses me at times. So yeah.
I love how you linked that truth to both support raising and outside, to another job of, if this is going to happen, the Lord has to do it. And I think that's a useful refocusing of how we view the world, that, yeah, we know that being support based, but at the same time, that's just true in pretty much anything that we step into. Like, if this is going to happen, the Lord has to move. So thanks so much for sharing. We are, just a gift to have you here and to have you step into these conversations and just trust that God's going to use it. Before we end, we're going to end with just some quick hitting questions that don't have to be related to what we just talked about, just to get to know you a little bit more, kind of hear some other things about you before we part ways. So I'm going to fire these off and you can just answer them, and they don't need to be long. Sound good?
Great.
All right. So number one, who or what is inspiring you right now?
This book wrecked me with the gospel 1,000 times over. Highly recommend.
Okay. An Impossible Marriage, who's it by?
Lori and Matt Krieg.
Number two, who is someone else in Collegiate that we should talk to, and what should we talk to them about?
A lot about this, but Natalie Norton, how to train for an Ironman while doing LT full time.
Number three, with no explanation or context, what is one song or artist you would recommend right now?
Sun by Sleeping at Last.
And lastly, again, with no explanation or context, what is something that you think everyone should try at least one time?
Work in food service.
Work in food service. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Anna. Just appreciate your time here. And those who are watching and listening, this has been Collegiate Conversations. We look forward to doing this again with you soon.